Good morning, everyone. If you see me squinting a little bit, it's because I've got a little bit of a headache, but we're going to work through that anyway. Hi, I'm Anna Walker, and I am your friendly daily creator, usually known as Felt It, and you'll usually see me working with felt and fiber art. But for the next several weeks, we're going to come together every day for an Internet Create Date, and that'll be Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Central Time. And I hope that you'll join us every day that you can, and we'll have some fun creating and get ourselves through being safe at home and do some fun things in the in-between time. Today, we are going to do a circle weaving. Now, weaving is something that I have started doing of late, and I really like the circle weaving. There's something very meditative about it for me, and I hope that you find yourself able to just enjoy this process. I'm going to turn the camera down, turn the big light on, and probably put on my sunglasses, and we'll get started with today's project. Excuse me. Okay, so we are going to need something circular to use as a guide. We're going to need a cereal box or a cracker box or something that's opened up. We're going to need a marker or a pencil or something to draw our circles with. And then we're going to need fibers and yarns and string and all kinds of cool stuff. We'll also need scissors. And we'll need a little bit of glue, and I'll tell you what the glue's for here in a second. But first, we're going to cut our template. Now, this is what our template is going to look like. It's two pieces of the cardboard that's been glued together, and it's got notches cut in all the way around it, okay? First thing we've got to do is draw those circles. And I need two of them, so I'm using both sides of our cardboard here, and now I need to draw the inner circle too. Forgot to do it on this side, so let's line it up. That looks about right. Okay, we're done with our marker or our pencil and our round item. Now it's just cutting these out. It's going to be a little easier if you tear it in half and you get off these little extra pieces to make it easier for you to cut the circle. Make sure that you put all of the extra pieces into the recycling bin. And remember, when we're cutting, we are letting our non-cutting hand, meaning the hand without the scissors, do the moving of the template for us. And we're going to cut all the way around. Now the center will be a little tricky to get to, but I'll show you a little trick that I have. And we're just going all the way around, letting our scissors cut and holding our scissor hand pretty straight and letting our non-scissor hand do the moving around. All the way around. And you see how much easier it makes it to follow the lines? I'm not going to cut the second one out because I've already got the template made, but I am going to show you how to get to the center of this. Now, you can take your scissors very carefully, poke a hole in the center, and I just wiggle one of the blades back and forth a little bit until I get an opening there. Then I'm going to take the scissors, and once again, I'm going to let my non-cutting hand do the turning. And you see how I'm doing kind of a spiral here so that I can get my blades of the scissors all the way in? That is the easiest way to get into the center of a circle, okay? And we'll continue going all the way around until we've got the center portion cut out. Now, it's not as necessary to be exact here in the center, but if you've got the center cut out, it will make it easier for you to do the weaving, okay? So, we're going to have two pieces just like this. Don't worry about that sound. That's just my coffee pot telling me that it's finally turning off. You're going to cut two of these, and you're going to put them cardboard side out, and you're going to glue them together. You're just going to put a little dot of glue in different places right around the center portion of the circle. And the reason you're going to put it on the center portion of the circle is because we've got to cut out these notches along the edge after it's dried. So we want to make sure that it's just the cardboard we're going through here instead of the cardboard and glue. It'll make it a little trickier cutting the notches. So just put your bead of glue on this side right around the center portion of the circle, just like that. You don't need a lot. It's just enough to hold the frame together. You can see it's just a tiny bead of glue all the way around the center. And I'm going to go ahead and set this off to the side. And I'm going to put it down here so that it can glue, and I'll have another template ready to go. But we've already gotten that done. We've got the template ready to go. It's been glued. It's actually been used to do this circle weaving, and we're going to use it again to do our circle weaving today. Now, to cut the notches out, it's easier when you have to cut something small for you to go in deeply into the scissor blades. If you're out here, sometimes it doesn't have enough power to be able to cut through 2 layers of cardboard. So I want you to very carefully take and cut a small notch at one angle and a small notch at the other angle. I like to cut the notches kind of following a clock. So I'll go 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then I'll start cutting in between in a nice even way. We're doing an even number here. You can do an even number or an odd number. It's up to you. But we just need those notches cut all the way around. Okay? So once the notches are cut, then we're going to need our string. Now this is going to be used as our warp. Anytime you look at a weaving or you look at a loom of any sort, it has strings and cords going in one direction that sort of hold that into place, and they work as sort of the framework for you to put the pretty colors through and all the way around. So let me show you how we're going to warp this particular circle weaving. I want to take, and I'm going to hold my finger here, but you might want to use a tiny piece of tape on the back to hold our strand in place while you're weaving, okay? I've just put a little bit of washi tape in there to sort of hold this into place. And we're going to come over from the back. We're going to go straight down, and then we're going to wrap it behind and hit it in the next notch, okay? Then around to the front on the very next notch, turn it to the back, wrap it around, and then we're ready to keep going. And this is how we are going to warp our board, okay? We go around to the back, we wrap it around one of those notches, we bring it forward, bring it to the next notch. And by doing this, we are creating a framework for us to weave our pretty threads and such around. Go to the next notch, turn it over, slide it in, go to the next notch, turn it over, wrap it around, go to the next notch. And you're keeping this tight, but it doesn't have to be super tight, okay? Wrap it around, go to the next notch, wrap it around, go to the next notch, wrap it around, and you'll see we're at the beginning again. So I'm going to hold it into place right here. And here's another part where you could use a little piece of tape if you wanted to, but I'm going to cut the string about the same length as the first string. And I'm going to take the tape off. Okay? And we're going to tie the beginning of our warp and the end of our warp together. And we're going to do it using our favorite knot, our surgeon's knot. You might need to have somebody hold that for you if you can't get it by yourself. Remember, surgeon's knot is right over left and under, left over right, and under and under. And then you pull it tight. And so we've got our knot, And we're not, no pun intended, not going to have to worry about this coming apart for us. So I'm going to trim these a little short so that they won't be in the way, and put that off to the side. So we have our warp ready to go, and this is what we're going to use as the base for our weaving going all the way around. So I'm done with the string. It can go off to the side, and now we can take a look at the different threads and cords and strips of fabric that we've pulled together, and we can decide what we want to use to start out our weaving. We're going to start in the center, and we're going to keep going around and around and around until we get all the way almost to the notches here, and then I'll show you how we're going to take the warp off of the loom, stretch out and shake out our weaving so that it turns like this. Because the threads are so close together here in the center, I want to use a thin yarn to start things out. Now I could leave it on this little bit, but it's going to be a little difficult getting into the center there. So what I'm going to do is just grab, I don't know, just a fairly short length, you know, relatively speaking, and trim it off. And then I want to take and make a little spool, as it were. So I'm going to wrap all of these around my fingers several times, and then I'm going to take, and just in the very center, I'm going to wrap it to make it a little easier to hang on to begin with, and leaving myself a beginning tail of about like this. So I want to come in to the center of my warp here, and I want to put the cord down in one spot, leave a little bit of a tail back there, and I want to take and push my spool, as it were, down in another spot. I want to flip it over because I want to tie a knot right here. Again, we're going to do a surgeon's knot, okay? So right over left and under, pull it tight, and then left over right and under, and then pull it tight again. Okay, that's going to be our center. I'm going to trim off our tail, put it off to the side. Now I'm ready to start weaving. So I'm going to come through two of the threads, really doesn't matter which two you come through, and I'm going to go over the very next one and go, nope, I'm going to go over two, okay? So I'm between this one and this one. I'm going to go over two, and then I'm going to come back up here. So I'm going over two, pulling it tight, and then come back up through the one in the middle. Okay, and we're going to pull it tight down, and then I'm going to come through two, and then come back one. So two forward, one back, and we'll turn it each time. Two forward, one back. And that's going to start our weaving. Two forward, and one back. Two forward, and one back. Can you see how that's starting to make our pattern here? It's hard to see at the beginning. Two forward and one back because it's so tight right there in the center. Two forward. And if you get three forward and you go one back, that's okay too. Every once in a while you want to unspin your thread because it will get kind of twisted up a little bit, and it's easiest to unspin it when you just let it hang down loose. And so one, two forward, and we might need to rewrap our thread into a tighter spool again, and one back, and I'll do that right after I do this one back. All right, so I'm going to find my end of the thread again. If you've got a clothespin handy. You can use a clothespin to help you hold this together, but the clothespin isn't going to go through very, very easily. So this is one of those things that you just got to fiddle with it every now and again. And I want to do a few more rounds so that we get a nice base in here for our other thicker yarns and strings that we're doing. 2 forward, 1 back, 2 forward, and 1 back. This might be one of the more fiddly things that we've done, but I know that you guys can do this. 2 forward, and 1 back. Two forward, and 1 back. And just make sure that you're pulling toward the center every once in a while just to get those threads to stay put. And then 2 forward, and 1 back. And 2 forward, and 1 back. It's just a very simple, easy pattern to do all the way around. 2 forward, and 1 back. And this just gives us a nice solid beginning for our weaving. 2 forward, and 1 back. And 2 forward, and 1 back. You see how the design is starting to create a nice little center there? We're going to keep going around for a couple more. 2 forward, and 1 back. And 2 forward, and 1 back. And anytime you see the string wrap on itself like that, it's time to lift it up and let it just unspin itself. Okay? And then 2 forward, and 1 back, and 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 2 forward, and 1 back. I know, we should make up a song about this, right? 2 forward, and 1 back, or maybe a dance. Ooh, this could be a great line dance. 2 forward, and 1 back, and 2 forward, and 1 back. Okay, so you see how we've got a nice beginning going here. We've got our center pretty well defined. I'm going to go 2 forward, and I'm going to set it down and trim off my thread so that we can tie a knot with the next piece that we're going to use. And I like texture. That's why I got some ruffly yarn and why I got some fabric and some different kind of fabric yarn. I even got one of my felted cords that we're going to use in this, and I've got some paper twine that we're going to use. And I think the paper twine is what I want to use next. And I know that this will take up a lot of space, so I'm cutting off a considerably shorter amount than what I did of the thin stuff that we started with. And we're going to, once again, do our surgeon's knot, right over left and under, hold it tight, and then left over right, and under and pull tight. And it takes practice doing these knots by yourself, but keep practicing and you'll be able to do them probably even better than Miss Anna at this point in time. And then pull it tight. Trying to get it pulled tight. Okay, so we've got it about as tight as we're going to get it. When you match up different textures, sometimes they don't match up really super well, but we've got it done. I'm going to hold these threads back here with my hand for right now. Let's find out where we came in. We came in right here, so we need to go back 1. So we're going to go back. And for this one, because the thread is so thick, I'm not worrying about holding the extra pieces in a little spool shape. I'm just using the length and I'm using the string itself. So 2 forward and 1 back. And 2 forward. Yep, I'm in the right spot. And 1 back. And you just get used to the different textures as you're working with them. This is really good for practicing your manual dexterity because you learn how to hold things with the hand that's not doing the weaving so that the hand that is doing the weaving can focus on that. Learn to use your fingers to help you hold things in place. 2 forward and 1 back. And as we build up the next layer of the pattern, we want to make sure that we're pulling tight, fairly tight. I mean, snug is a good word. It's not really tight, it's more snug. 2 forward and 1 back. And then 2 forward and 1 back. Now, just because this thread that we're using, this cording that we're using, isn't in a spool, doesn't mean that we don't have to pull it up and let it get its kinks out every once in a while. We do. 2 forward and 1 back. And 2 forward and 1 back. I don't know, if we walk 2 forward and 1 back, I think we'll still be ending up walking forward, don't you? I think so. And then 2 forward and 1 back. And 2 forward and 1 back. And 2 forward. Oops, there we go. And 1 back. My threads in the back are getting in the way a little bit, but I don't want to trim them off yet because I want to make sure that I go all the way around. 2 forward and 1 back. And 2 forward and 1 back. Now, right now, when I'm doing this back, see the 2 extra threads that I've got here? I am going to go over them as I go back, and that will give them a place to sort of hide and get locked into place so that they won't be fiddly anymore. See how that's holding those in? I can fold them down until I get around the next time. 2 forward and 1 back. And 2 forward and 1 back. And 2 forward and 1 back. And 2 forward we've made it all the way around the circle. Okay, so we've now made it all the way around the circle with our second color, and I'm going to continue this color until I get down to the end. So I want you to keep weaving 2 forward and 1 back until you get to the end of your string, and then we're going to tie on a different one and we'll continue on with our pattern. It seems slow going right at the first because we're working in a very small area where you don't get to see a whole lot of progress really quickly. So keep working that pattern, and once we build up this center and we go to some of the thicker threads, you're going to see how quickly it comes together. And I think you're going to really appreciate it. Well, I got stuck somewhere. Where did I get stuck? There we go. And I'm just continuing the pattern on, 2 forward, 1 back, letting my thread get untwisted every once in a while. 2 forward, 1 back, pulling down toward the center every once in a while just to make sure I'm keeping my threads fairly taut. 2 forward, 1 back, continuing on. And you'll see that as we start to get more space between our threads as we go further out in the circle, it's going to go a little faster for us. Now we're coming up on where we anchored those threads from where we connected our last 2 strands, and we're going to briefly take a moment and we're going to trim those ends off, because now we know that those are held into place by 2 different bits of weaving. Once we get around it again, then we'll trim those off and we'll know that they'll be held in place. We're almost there. 2 forward, 1 back. Not quite yet. Threads want to jump in there and get held in place. 2 forward, 1 back. And now as we go around this one here, we're going to go 2 forward. And then when we do the 1 back, we're going to wrap around those threads once again. And that has got them locked in, so we can trim off these edges here. Don't trim your warp like I almost did, but trim off those edges, and now we don't have to worry about those threads coming up anymore. Okay? Going to continue the pattern. We're almost to the end. It doesn't take that long once we get started going further out in the circle. It really doesn't. And you will be amazed at how fast the rest of this goes. 2 forward, 1 back. 2 forward, 1 back. 2 forward, 1 back. And then I am going to go 2 forward, because we've got string about right. See how that pattern is starting to come up? I love the texture too. We've got enough that we could tie off our next one, and I'm going to do this bright sari silk yarn just because it's going to give us a pop of color. Again, we're doing our surgeon's knot, right over left and under, and then left over right and under and under. Come on. I'm going to pull that tight. So we've got that knotted up there. I'm going to pull off. Now this particular yarn that I have is one that I've had for a very long time, and I like it because it's so beautiful, but it's also very, very, very swirly. And so I'm going to take off a length. I've got a knot in there that I noticed. I'm going to take off a length and cut it, and I want to get that knot out of there. Otherwise, we will knot up the works, and we don't want to do that. So let's get that knot out of there. There we go. And then I'm going to take, and I'm going to make a little spool here, because this will allow us to spool up a little bit and give us a little bit of length to work with. And then we're going to continue our pattern. Okay, so we went back, and now we're going to go forward. It's going to get fiddly from here on in, because we're going to have to find a way to push the fibers through, push the yarn through. Doing our one back. And then we're going to go two forward. Okay. And I might have grabbed a little bit long of a piece, but I think we can make this work. And two, one back. I love circle weavings because you can add so much different texture by the different yarns and threads that you use to create the circle weaving. I'm just going to leave this one long and loose. The spool idea isn't working out very well. And then one back. So we'll just have a long tail that we're pulling back and forth as we work our pattern up. Same pattern where we've been doing all along, two forward, one back. We're just going to have a long tail that we'll be working with here. Two forward. Oh, let's get those other strings out of the way so that they don't jump in here. Tape these down until I get around to that side, just to hold them out of my way. So two forward and one back. We're just going to continue the pattern here all the way around. And I'm just going to say thank you to all of you, because my headache appears to be leaving me. So apparently what I needed to do was get online and have a create date with my friends. Maybe that and drinking a whole lot of coffee. Who knows? I'm going to let you guys have the credit for this. Two forward and one back. And I know that if you're doing it loose like this, that it gets kind of fiddly and it gets kind of twisty, but just hang in there. You've got this. It's going to be okay. And even if we do have a twist that shows up that we don't catch when we're doing the weaving, it's just going to add some texture to our design when we get done. So two forward, one back, and just keep it going. And I'm loving the design that's coming about from the different colors that we've used. I hope you've got an awful lot of colors that you've been able to use too. I know that because I'm a fiber artist, that I have a lot of different kinds of fibers around. And so mine might look way different and way fancier than yours does. But you know what? Your pattern with the fibers and the yarns that you're using can look just as beautiful. It really can. And sometimes I think having less is more, and it allows the design to show through. Whereas, you know, when you get artsy fartsy like I do, you know, you can lose some of the beauty of the pattern because you're so focused on the colors. It's really up to you and what you like and what appeals to your aesthetic. Your aesthetic means what things that make you feel good, things that you like. So you know how some people like purple, like me, and some people think purple is horrible, like my best friend. Well, that's different aesthetics. That's different things that we like. And we're all different. You know what? We all have our likes and our dislikes. And the same comes through with art. And when we're, you know, creating something, choose things that make you smile and that make you feel good. That's what art is about. It's about expressing what makes you feel good about the world around you and about the creations around you and what things help you feel inspired to create. We're almost at the beginning where we can lock down those fibers for the first time. 2 forward and 1 back. All right, now we're at the point where we're going to go around these fibers that we tied on. So we want to make sure that we go around both of them. So 2 forward, go all the way around both of those fibers before we do our 1 back. And that way we'll have them locked into place for that first bit. See how we've locked them into place? I'm going to leave the tape on there for now so that it'll hold them until we go all the way around again and lock them into place again. But before I do that, I've got yarn that's just getting fiddly, so I need to let it hang out and lose some of its spin so that it'll be easier to get in and out with our pattern. Excuse me. All right, so we're ready to go again. So we're going 2 forward and then 1 back. We have our end pieces locked in, and so now we're going to go around the circle again and just keep up with that pattern with our yarns. Now if you wanted to, this is a long piece that I've got here. I could take, and I think I'll do it just to show you how you can do this. I'm going to take and I'm going to double the thread here. And I'm going to do that by leaving a little bit of a tail in the back, holding that tail in place, and then continuing my pattern. And that will make it possible for us to go a little bit faster with this. 2 forward and 1 back. We will have another tail that we'll want to lock in, but I like the texture idea of doubling this up. And 2 forward and 1 back. And we're just going to continue our pattern, but we're using a double thread now. So it's going a little faster. And 2 forward and 1 back. 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 2 forward. See, it's just that same pattern, and 1 back, and 2 forward, and 1 back, and 2 forward, and 1 back, and 2 forward, and 1 back. Oops, we got our tail in there. And 2 forward. See how the pattern is gotten a little thicker on this edge? This had just the first part with the single, and now we're working the double. See how much it's adding some extra layers of texture to it? That's why I wanted to do this second line and pull 2 strands through. So you can add texture and different color delineations by using 2 strands instead of 1 if you wanted to, or by taking, like I did, and sort of finding the middle and folding it in half. There are all kinds of different ways that you can do this. We're just following our 2 forward and 1 back pattern. We're almost to the point where we can get rid of a couple of the threads. 2 forward and 1 back. and we're almost to the point where I'm going to have to hold the frame a little different so that we can get around underneath the cardboard here, because we do need to weave as close to the edge as we possibly can so that this will be able to be pulled off of the loom and be a single piece all in itself without having to worry about tying off edges or having strands extra, any of that stuff. So once I get around these loose threads here in the back and I can trim them off, then I'm going to lay this flat while I'm working it, and we will work on getting closer to the edge here. All right, my 2 strands are there. I can trim those off in just a second. Need to pull this down. All right, and now we're going to come up and we're going to lock this one into place. Remember, we just go 2 forward and 1 back, but we make sure that that loose strand is right there so that as we wrap the fiber around, it goes around that loose strand too. And we might have to pull it a little tight and then pull it down. All right, so I'm going to hold this in place. These are going to get trimmed off. So I'm going to take these 2 and I'm going to trim them close. There we go. And I'm going to take this one and I'm going to trim it close. There we go. Okay, so we're going to continue our pattern all the way around. And I'm going to do it from this point first so that you can see how I get underneath on that cardboard portion. So 2 forward. Come on, 2 forward. Gotta get my hands used to doing things a little bit differently here. There's our 2 forward. And our 1 back. Got that little edge that's just sticking up there. I'm gonna tuck it right on in. See if I can get it to just stay cool. 2 forward. And 1 back. And 2 forward. Just going to continue this on until we run out of this thread, and then we're going to add another one. 1 back and 2 forward, 1 back, 2 forward, 1 back. Just continuing to work the pattern. 2 forward, 1 back, and 2 forward, 1 back, 2 forward, 1 back. I love this sari silk yarn just because of the texture and the colors. It just makes me smile when I see the colors and the fuzziness, and I think about the saris, the dresses that and outfits that they wear in India. Think about how beautiful those outfits must have been to have been able to produce this yarn from the cut up bits of the old garments. This makes me appreciate that there's so much in this world, different places from where we live, that have so many beautiful things to see, and so much difference between what we're used to seeing here. I love exploring new places and exploring different traditions and the colors and the textures and everything that comes out from doing that. All right, this is getting a little fiddly, so I'm going to hold it up and unspin it a little bit. And let's see, where are we? There we go, 2 forward and 1 back. And you see how I'm kind of pushing up a little bit? You want to be careful. You can use your thumb to sort of push up to give you some space when you get close to where the frame is. But you want to make sure that you don't pull off your warp, because we need those notches to stay put for now. Otherwise, we'll have a tough time finishing the weaving. 2 forward and 1 back. 2 forward and 1 back. We're just continuing this on until we run out, and we're going to run out here really soon because it's going faster and faster as we get further and further out of the circle. Further we get out of the center, the more yarn we use to go through the different spots, and so that's why it goes a little faster when we get to this point. Of course, we're nearing the spot where the connections are further apart, and it might seem that it should go slower, but because we're able to use up that much more yarn, it seems to go faster. And just 2 forward and 1 back. We're almost at the end here, and we'll add another piece. And because we've got this loop on this end, we're going to be able to connect our next strand in a little bit of a different way, because we can have that loop hold things in place, and I don't think we'll need to knot it. We'll find out for sure if Miss Anna knows what she's saying, but I'm going to go until we have nothing left here and see if we can't connect this by pulling our next thread through this loop on the end and letting that be what holds it in place. We're almost there. Where'd you go? There you are. Almost there. Okay, so I'm going to be able to go through here. I'm thinking. I'm going to go around. Okay, this is going to be really tight for a second, but I'm going to push that loop right through there. You see how I've got that loop there? Let's see, what do I have? What do I have? What do I have? I'm going to use the scissors just to sort of hold that loop open. This is the next one. Is this the next one I'm going to do? Yeah, I think this is the next one I'm going to do. Yeah, this is the next one I'm going to do. But I'm going to do just a short amount of it. So I'm going to put this piece of yarn through this loop. Okay, so there's our tail, and it's held together, it's held in place by that yarn loop. So I'm going to come up where I should have gone around to come up with the other yarn, and I'm going to push up this yarn, and that is going to be held in place by our loop that is stuck in that other bit of yarn. I'm just sliding it through with my fingers, and now we'll go 2 forward, so 1, 1, 2, and then we'll go 1 back. Now this is where we're going to have to get creative in getting our design. So our 1 back is going to be up underneath here. We got to go underneath there, and there's our 1 back. And our tail is coming through, and that's okay. We can tuck that tail that we caught in the other yarn down behind and just sort of hold it in place. Then we're going to go 2 forward and one back. And you see how I'm just using the space here on the top? I'm not going on the back side anymore because we've got this to the point of where the cardboard is. So I am not going to go to the back side anymore. I'm just going to go, excuse me, 1, 2 forward, and then tuck it underneath to go the one back, and I'm going to pull. So I'm going to keep it on the top part here for the rest of our weaving, because we're going to go around, and it's going to go so fast to get the rest of this done. 1, 2 forward, tuck it under the one I went forward on to do my one back, okay? And we're just going to keep moving the yarn through right here on the top of our design. Get these out of the way. Okay, and 1, 2 forward, tuck it under, and come right back. Okay, so it's the same pattern, we're just doing it and holding it in a slightly different way. Okay, 1, 2 forward, tuck it under, pull it to the one back. And we'll just keep working this until we've gone around and we get closer and closer to the end. 1, 2 forward, tuck it under, one back. Make sure that when you tuck it under, do your 2 forward and then tuck it under so that it's going toward the outside, and that way you'll keep your yarns going in the same pattern that you've been doing, and you won't have to worry about adding an additional layer of design. Now, if it so happens that you do it that way, it's okay. So 1, 2 forward, lift it up, tuck it under, pull it toward the out, and one back. And then every time you do that, come toward the center, find your end, 1, 2 forward, tuck it under, one back. And that's how we'll finish up our design here. 1, 2 forward, tuck it under, one back. It's going to get tighter and tighter, and that's the point. We want it to get tighter and tighter. 1, 2 forward, tuck it under, one back. One, 2 forward, tuck it under, one back. One, 2 forward, tuck it under, one back. Today's a little bit of a longer class that we're having. 1, 2 forward. But sometimes we get, projects that are going to take us a little extra time, and one back. And that's okay. It's good to have projects that we can do that are fast projects, but it's also good to have some projects that help us learn some skills and learn new things to do with our fingers. 1, 2 forward, and one back. Tuck it under. Whoops. Fingers got caught. Tuck it under. Pull it out. One back. You see how the texture is just adding a different layer of design to our circle weaving. 2 forward and one back. And 2 forward. Tuck it under. One back. 2 forward, tuck it under, 1 back, 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 might have to go slower at this point, and that's okay. 2 forward, tuck it under, 1 back, 2 forward, tuck it under, 1 back. Whoops. Want to make sure we keep it on the front so that we don't screw up our warp there. 2 forward, tuck it under, 1 back, 2 forward, tuck it under, 1 back, 2 forward, tuck it under, 1 back, 2 forward, tuck it under. See how I'm using my one finger on my other hand to sort of lift up the warp thread. 1 back, 2 under, tuck it under, 2 over, tuck it under, sorry, 1 back, 2 over, tuck it under, 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 1 back. Whoops, we lost our warp. Pull this up. If that happens, just pull it up and tuck that warp back under where it goes. That tells us we're almost to the end, okay? And you might need to hold your finger down here on the warp to make sure that it doesn't pop off. 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp, 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp, 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp, 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp, 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp. See how that's holding it in place while we're going around at the very edge here? 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp, 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp, 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp, 2 over, tuck it under, 1 back, hold the warp, 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp, 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp, 2 over, under, take it back, hold the warp. We're going to go one more time around and then we'll be ready to pop it off the loom. So continue your pattern, make sure you're holding the warp in place because it is going to get tighter, and as you go around hold that warp in, but let's go around one more time until we'll be at the end. 2 over, go under, 1 back, hold the warp. That's our pattern. 2 over, 1 under, go under, 1 back, hold the warp. This is how we're going to finish our design today. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. We're almost there. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. This is our last one here. 2 over, 1 under, take it back, hold the warp. Now we've got our design finished. We've got our thread sticking up right here. This can be where we tie a loop and that's where we hang it from. But to get it off the loom, all we have to do is just pop the warp off of the notches. Okay, and I know we've been keeping those notches on there, and I'll show you what this is going to do. I'm going to pop the warp off. Because we've woven all the way to the edge, our weaving isn't going to come undone. then we're just going to take it and we're just going to sort of let it stretch out a little bit. And then we won't even see the edges where the notches were because they're holding everything right into place. And there is our circle weaving. And we've got a beautiful center, and then we've got all this texture on the outside. This is gorgeous. Now we can use it as a piece that we, attach several of them together. Maybe it turns into a mobile or a wall hanging. But I want to let you know, this works really nice for a mug rug too. And depending on how, bulky you did your choosing on your pieces of thread, it can be a mug rug. It could be, you could put a pin back on it, and it could be a little design that you wear. You could, I'm going to turn the camera up. You could take it and put a barrette on it, and you could wear it in your hair. Put it on a bracelet. Who knows? But we've got our circle weavings done. I hope you had a great time today. I know that this was a long lesson. Thank you for hanging in there for this. Tomorrow, we are going to do some fun Lego printing. I don't have a sample for you, but you know what? We're going to have fun. It's going to be easy to do. Thank you for being here with me today. If you want to know more about, this fiber art stuff that I do and felting that I do, you or your parents can go to stabthingsintoexistence.com and you can find out all about it. So until tomorrow, have fun finishing your weaving, and I can't wait to see.